righty. Hey, you guys. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are in the world. And we do like to see where you guys are in the world. So throw in the chat where you are. And we see Jason. Where are you, Jason? Welcome. I don't remember seeing you here before, but thanks for joining us. And we're going to be diving into your questions. Make sure you've given us all your questions. You can add them to the chat as we go through. But we have a bunch, so it'll keep us busy for a while. And hope you guys are doing well in spite of this crazy earth that we're living on. How can this be? Ouch. We just sort of make our way through the pandemic, and guess what? We're into another piece of unbelievable... Where is it going? Anyway, I'm not going to get into a whole commentary on that, but we're going to take a break from the insanity, just like we did... Take a breath. We did during the pandemic. That's how I started this whole live broadcast, was... I looked at it and went, man, people need to be watching something other than the news about the pandemic. And that's how we started, and we were really cooking. We did like 4 or 5 of these a week. I was just on it, and so we're going to keep it up. And creativity is the antidote. Just remember this. It's the antidote for destruction. Think about it. When people are destroying things, that's the exact polar opposite of creation, right? So when they're destroying things, they are definitely taking things that have been created and turning them into rubble, in this case. So we want to focus on the other side of this whole coin, which is how to be more creative. And that is also a way to stay up and out of the muck of life. Life can throw at us all sorts of things, and believe me, that's why I wrote this book here on creativity. And a lot of people have written me back saying, thank you, Mark, you really helped me with my creativity. You helped me understand what creativity is and how to navigate it, and some practical tools, and hearing from people who are very, very creative, like people like Chris Burkhardt, amazing photographer, and Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, and like 12 other voices. Incredibly creative people are in that book, so you can check it out. Jeff in Pleasanton. Hey, Jeff. Okay, so let's just kind of get started here. So, if you don't know who I am, I'm Marc Silber. I am a photographer. I'm an author, educator in Carmel, California. And our show is not brought to you by YouTube. That's not the right thing to watch. Our show is brought to you, well, it is partially brought to us by YouTube, but it's brought to us by Bay Photo Lab. Now, here's the deal, you guys. You got to make prints, and they will help you make them. 25% off on albums. This is a really cool way to make an album of anything. Your trip to Albania or Mexico or wherever you went, put it in there. Paris, your kids, your grandchildren, or your professional work. Definitely you can make it into books here, which is essentially what an album is. And you see you've got a bunch of different designs, 25% off. And this is really cool, 10% off on all frame prints. Now, it's so important to make sure you're framing your prints, and you don't have to get... I don't like these kinds of frames myself. I usually go for the black, but not necessarily. There are some that, really pop in a different color, like brown, and you can specify the matte that you want. This is such a cool feature, you guys, with Bay Photo, because in the old days, we had to get my prints made, then go to a framer, and then give it to the framer and talk it over with them and decide which frame, and then get it back, and then I'd ship it to the client. Now, you just do it all at once. You sell a print, and you get it framed, and it goes right to your client, ships off. So easy, and it's so cool to do it this way. And then what else have we got here? 25% off always on your first order. So Thank you, Bay Photo, for sponsoring our live broadcasts. I love you guys. You guys have done great work over the years and some really great photographers. Jeff Hosier. Jeff, you introduced me back when, remember? I don't know if you remember that, but that was like 2006 or something when they had that tiny little space by the drive-in in Santa Cruz. And now they've got this huge facility. It used to be Seagate's old campus in Scotts Valley, humongous, like 50,000 square feet. So they went from kind of, I don't know, I remember it being maybe a few hundred square feet, 500 square feet, to 50,000. So that's 5 or 10 times their growth, and they've done a really great job. Okay, Tim. They were in Aptos. Okay, you're right. So, Tim from Oklahoma, great to have you join us. Okay, guys, let's dive into your questions. So, Jared, would you give us the first question? Put it on.
Yeah,
we'll put it on the screen.
first question, and you can put it on the screen while I read it out. So this is from Diana, and she was wondering, how do you create a good workflow for your notebooks? I'm going to a conference soon and would like some tips to help me with that and my work.
Well, you're in luck, Diana. I've written in two different places. I've written about it. In this book, Create, I talk about keeping notebooks and also in advancing your photography. And I made a notebook, which I don't have for sale. I should probably get it back for sale. This is my AYP notebook, and inside of it, there's your whole thing on how to use this notebook. So I'll just read you what I wrote here. It's probably the easiest way to answer this question. So as photography is a visual subject, it helps to use your notebook for visual thinking. This is where you draw things and you diagram things. That's called visual thinking. And it is different than thinking with words or sounds or thoughts. You visualize and you sketch things out. You've seen Dan Milner's. If you haven't, you look at his notebooks. He's got all sorts of visual clues in there about what he's writing about. Sometimes he'll take a Polaroid and he'll paste it in there, an Instax, or he'll print something on just his home printer and paste it into the notebook. Any kind of way that you can add a visual, that's very helpful. So that's point number one as far as your workflow. And you sketch or write down your discoveries, keywords that you want to remember. Like you come across something like this, visual thinking. Write that down. Always, it helps you remember these things. Diagrams and drawings of how something works. Or even how, if you're going to do a shoot, you can diagram how you want it to look. That's a shot list. And it's very helpful, even if it's just a rough pencil sketch. Jot down your flashes of inspiration. That's really important. Keith Code, the amazing, and he's on my Instagram. Are you guys on my Instagram? There's my handle. You should make sure you go there and look at my latest post from Keith Code. And then, of course, follow me and like that post. Leave your comments, too, because I love hearing from you guys. But Keith Code talked about you got to grab those moments of inspiration before they just fly away. Okay, so also, the other thing about Instagram is I'm posting every day now. So you'll get pieces of stuff that I talk about, maybe a paragraph that I might talk about somewhere else. And it's really, I think, kind of helpful. So when you look at art, and I advise you to do that constantly, whether it's going to a museum, pulling out a book, in the last place would be online. Write in your notebook what you see, like what resonates for you. How was the subject composed within the frame? Look at that. Like, how did that artist compose within the frame? Jared, while I'm doing this, why don't you pull up an example of like Vermeer, and we'll just kind of go through this. And I'll just, I got to just add you over to that screen. Let's see where that is. Hang on a second. I'm going to add Jared to guest one there. And there we go. Is this your... I don't know if you're sharing your screen yet, or you got your anything up on the screen, but as soon as you do, there it is.
Got it up on this.
Boom. Okay, good. So let's add you here. There we go. Okay, go back to this. Yeah, Vermeer. This is one I use a lot.
Trying to find.
Yeah, without a lot of text all over it. So you would look at this.
We'll pull this up.
That's a good one. Just go to that one on the right there. It's perfect. That's the Milkmaid. I use that in my books. Great example. So how was the subject composed within the frame? You can see, right? Kind of jot these things down. How were they lit? Well, all the light is coming from this north-facing window. That was what Vermeer did, and that's what Vermeer lighting is all about. You'll notice that anything that isn't facing that window is in shadows, which is exactly how you use Vermeer lighting. How did the light strike the subject? Look at each layer. Now, there's layers in this painting, right? What's in the foreground? What's in the middle ground is her. What's in the background? You've got various layers, and he did a really good job of making those look three-dimensional. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? What is your eye drawn to? For me, it's drawn right to the Milkmaid. And then you kind of take a little journey around, yeah. How did the artist use color? You see they're kind of muted, but that's how it would have looked. They're not going to be really super bright. The blue is probably the brightest, the most vibrant. But again, all that light is coming from that north-facing window, which is kind of diffused already. So these are the kinds of things you can write in your notebook. When you're studying stuff, sketch out. Whoops. There we go. Well, I'm going to get rid of you there, Jared. You don't need to be
yeah.
There we go. When you Dan Milner's still here. What do you know? Hi, Dan.
He's always around.
Yeah. When you sketch out stuff, when you're trying to understand things like aperture or focal length or whatever, it really helps to diagram these things out. So I hope that helps you with your workflow. As far as I put a daily entry in every morning, and I just focus on generally what I've had, because I start the day off and I study for a couple hours a day usually before I do anything. So whatever I've had the most inspiration about, I write about usually in my notebook. If I know I've got a challenge, I'll put that in there. Try to kind of pull it apart. It's really your conversation with yourself. My notebooks don't go anywhere but to me. And it's really helpful as an artist to do that. I do go back through them every now and then and look back, oh, wow, that's interesting. I remember I had a problem with that. I don't have that problem anymore. Or, I do still have that. Maybe I had to really nail this thing down. So thanks for asking, Diana, and I hope that helps. All right. What's our next question, Jared?
All right, our next one, I had to kind of cut it down a little bit to have it for the YouTube comment, but I'll read the full thing.
Cool.
This is from Stuart. I go on vacations or have events locally, and I want to produce work that has some meaning, but there is not time to get deeply involved. It comes, I guess, between a postcard shot and a project, sort of a photo essay, a short story version sort of things. Would this be a possible idea for future features? So I think he wants some ideas on how can you do this?
It's really interesting. What timing, Jared? We're editing a photo walk of me, which begins with me writing down a list of photos that I want to come back with, a shot list. And that's really a great way to do it, because then you go out, you write down like you're going somewhere. I talk about going to Paris, and I wanted to come back with, I had 3 or 4 photographs I knew I wanted for sure. One was the Eiffel Tower without it looking like a postcard. I wanted a photograph of the famous Deux Chevaux, which is a 2-cylinder, I believe. Or no, that means 2 horses, or somebody who speaks French can translate.
I believe it was 2 horses.
I think it's got to be more than 2 horsepower. But anyway, maybe you could look it up while we're 2CV, Citroen 2CV. Anyway, make a list of these and then go out and photograph them. And that's your photo essay right there. I've done this for magazines where I had a magazine in the San Francisco area where they wanted me to capture, it's a suburban area. It was in Silicon Valley, but they wanted me to capture it as though I were going to a foreign country. And so I just made a list of all what I thought were fairly unusual shots. I took a polo match, and I took a photograph from the roof of the publisher with a telephoto lens that made it look like it was in Yosemite. The sun was setting, and there were trees and mountains in the back room. Nobody would ever guess it was where it was. So you can make your shot list and then go out and look for them. Now, here's the thing about a shot list. These are your pre-visualized. These are the ones you've already visualized before you even head out, which you should always do anyway. But then you're going to encounter ones you didn't even know were going to happen. And those are your spur of the moment. Those are your extemporaneous is a fancy way of saying it. It just means without any planning, you're just, whoa, look at that. So be prepared for those. Be prepared for those. And you see them in that split second when you see them, you are still visualizing. You see something and you go, whoa, I better press the shutter. That little split second is still a visualization. It could be a microsecond, but you still do that. So I hope this helps, Stuart. Get your shot list out and just go for it. All right, Jared, who else have you got?
I looked it up, and it means 2 steam horsepowers.
Isn't that crazy?
And it was used for tax purposes, so it literally was for the purpose of 2 taxable horsepower, which determined how much you would have to pay when you registered the car. So fun fact.
It's got to be more than 2. Can you imagine a car with 2 horsepower? I mean, my Vespa has 200 horsepower. Like, come on. So Hector, hey, good to see you, Hector. I'm drinking kombucha. I do intermittent fasting, which means I don't eat until later in the day. Really good for your health, by the way, and a good way to lose weight. But what I do is I drink kombucha.
Sounds good.
Hector, I'm going to be calling on you soon to do a little interview, so stay tuned.
Yes.
All right, so who's our... here we go.
Our next question's from Mark. What are your thoughts about contributing to online publications without getting paid, but getting access has to value of your portfolio? So I think they're like, is it worth doing it for the portfolio?
Yes. First, easy answer, yes. It's just get your work out there. It's so important to get your work out to the world. And besides just, social media. Okay, we all use social media, fine. But if you have a way of getting your work out and you can contribute to that, that's a really good thing, just to see your work out in the world and for other people to recognize who you are. And it really helps to build your voice, because it's a funny thing. If you have all your photographs in your computer and they don't go anywhere, you don't ever get any feedback from your viewer. It's very unsatisfying. It would, I knew this kid who, we were teenagers, and he became a really good guitarist. He used to play in his room. He was very badly introverted and really was afraid of people. But he would stay in his room and play guitar all the time. And he became a virtuoso, but nobody knew about it. It was kind of sad. He had a sad ending, too. And it's kind of related to that. It's just an unfulfilled feeling of like, I have accomplished this, but nobody knows about it. So get your work out to the world any way you can. What's the harm? Okay? And, there's another thing is, as you get your work out, you'll find there'll be better opportunities will pop up. That's something I've always discovered. People will ask you for something better, or you ask them. Be very proactive about getting your work out. Look for places where you can do exhibits. There's community exhibits going on all the time. There's restaurants, for instance. I've done some of those. Those are kind of fun, where they when I was relaunching my career as a photographer, I found local restaurants, and they wanted to use my photographs. They actually mixed my photographs with a painter, and we took over the whole restaurant. It was like 30 or 40 prints on the wall, and that was really cool. So look for those opportunities. Get your work out to the world, absolutely, and make, that means that you're going to have to make prints also. Very important.
And band together with other photographers. If you are a member of the AYP club, which you should be, you can see that Bert, one of our good friends who has published books and stuff, has recently banded together with 25 other photographers, as well as a high school photography group. And they have met up with the local Naval Air Museum to give them display over creating an exhibit.
Awesome,
So that's
Bert.
a fantastic way of working together. Huge kudos to Bert for helping organize that among all these other photographers.
Excellent. I'm going to jump over to Hector right now. How about
And
that?
actually, Hector works well with our next question, which is any tips on storage? And somebody else said storage there with Paul, who asked the first question, storage issues often on the road, which is very similar to organizing.
Yeah. I'll get to that one. I'm going to just address Hector first. What is your challenge, Hector? Maybe
Oh,
since you're.
that's specifically that's what he said in his hello, Mark and Jared. What is your perspective on organizing pics? This seems to be my struggle at the moment.
Oh, organizing pictures. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I just use Lightroom. It's one of its greatest features is the fact that it introduced an organization system back in the day when Lightroom was first launched, 2007, I believe. Before that, you had Photoshop, and there was no organization system with Photoshop. There really wasn't. You had to put it in your own folders, and so it was a pretty big breakthrough when Lightroom came around. I think all editing software now has that organization system. I just made a course about this. It's coming out, I don't know, hopefully soon. We're gearing up for it in the next month or so about using Lightroom, but you can apply the same principles that I go over to any of your editing software, but organize it according to a system where you can find it later. Now, I like to put the date and the subject. So, because date helps me identify, like for instance, I've done a lot of shoots in Yosemite. Okay, so I want to be able to identify the one I did in 2013. October 2013, I might put in there. Yosemite, October 2013. You can either put the date at the front end, which I tend to do, and then the subject after it. It's kind of a really simple way to organize. From there, so you just don't want a jumble of stuff all over the place. You want to make sure you're putting things in folders neatly so you can find them again. One of our greatest frustrations, isn't it, is I know I've got that somewhere. Where is it? And I still have that happen to me, and it's annoying. The new Lightroom doesn't use libraries. The cloud version doesn't actually have libraries, which I still like the library personally. But it does organize things according to date, and you can pull it up according to subject too. But I prefer Lightroom Classic for a lot of reasons, and one of them is I like the library a lot. But Hector, and who was the other one that Mark asked this? So no,
It was Paul and Highland Mary. They were also asking for tips on storage.
Okay.
Specifically, Highland Mary wants to know for when they're off the grid and on the road, which you've done many.
Yeah. I mean, I have numerous drives. I was going to see if I could grab one here. I like SanDisk, and so you can get. I have a huge 12 terabyte drive that I keep all my stuff on. So you're going to want an external hard drive for sure. And let me see if I can grab one of my little drives here without disrupting things. Jared, you can keep talking while I'm doing this.
Yeah, kind of going along with that, drives are really important. Have them labeled. The drives that Mark has, there are all labeled, and that's where, we organize things. File structure is really important. Once again, putting things in folders.
I'm going to.
That's how we get things.
I'm not going to violate the most.
The upload that we're doing.
Well, that's coming from a different drive, but I don't want to just unplug this without. Let's see which one is this.
Right. I was just telling them how it's also really important when you've got multiple drives to mark the drives.
Yes.
So that you know which drive is which, because otherwise you can lose track real fast.
Oh boy, that's so good. You know what I do? I have a trick for that. For a bigger drive, but let me show you this first of all. So this is a Western Digital, which, by the way, owns SanDisk. This is a 4 terabyte drive, so you can put a lot of stuff in here and travel around with it. This has got Bob Holmes' complete classes in this drive. So get one of these to travel with. You want to have access to a drive if you're traveling. So also that allows you to back stuff up. You got to have good backups, guys. And then have an external drive for your bigger stuff. So one of the things I do if I archive a drive, it's like this. I will print from my Finder what's in that drive and then tape it to the outside of the drive. So I don't have to open it to find out what's in it. And I can go, oh yeah, there's where my 2015 shoot to whatever is. Now, I don't archive my photographs at all. I mean, I make backups of them, but they don't go in some hidden drive. Photographs relatively speaking, don't take up that much room compared to videos. Videos I archive because if I've done a client production from 2012, I'm not going to look at it all the time, but I don't want to get rid of it necessarily. So I put it in a drive and it's archived, and again I print out what's in the Finder, and that's really a handy way to do it. Just make a print of it.
And you may not think right now that that's necessarily super useful. It's like, oh, there's not much, and everything. But when you're looking back at drives from like 2009, that's very helpful.
Really helpful. I'm going to show you what I mean. This is a living, breathing example here. Let me just get this screen. And this morning we're editing this thing, and I don't know, my Stream Deck is frozen. You're just not allowing me to switch, which is really strange. Okay, I could do it this way. Here, we'll do it this way. So I'm going to. Yeah, I don't want that. Get that out of there. Okay. Well, let's see. Yeah.
The joys of live.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. So this is we're editing this right now. You can just print this out. So we're editing the Point Lobos photo walk. You just do a screen capture and then print this and then tape that to the side of the drive that you're archiving. That's what I'm talking about here. Okay? Very helpful. The name of the game, you guys, is very simple. Label. Constantly, when in doubt, get a better name for it, because your naming convention needs to communicate to somebody else that doesn't know what you're talking about. And you know what? You're the somebody else. Because right now you're working on a project and you call it, I don't know, photo walk. Oh, I'll always remember which one that is. It was in January 2021. No, you won't. You'll go, which photo walk was that? So put the name of the photo walk, Point Lobos. Make it a descriptive name and a date. And that's how you stay organized. Okay?
Not only that, but you can search in a computer. So make it easily searchable terms.
Good point. You know what I realized we didn't do is we didn't tell people to subscribe and enable the bell before we even got started here. I can't believe that. Okay, that's right. Make it searchable. All right, so let's get rid of this and let's go to the next question.
Our next question is from Christy. What's a good black and white filter or app to use? I'd like to know. And this was from one of our recent critique
You're in
sessions.
luck. The one I use, and I've done a show on it, and it's one I happen to really love. It's called Silver Effects Pro, and it's available as a free download for 30 days. Go to DxO Labs. Jared could even
Put a link in the chat.
put the link in there. You can download it for 30 days. And then if you like it, just buy it. I use it all the time. Now, here's the deal. Why do I use that and not, I don't know, go into Lightroom and just move sliders around? Because what these guys did was really cool. And I talked to the people who developed it. They took film and they reverse engineered it. So they took one of my favorite films, is called Panatomic X. It's a Kodak, very low ISO, 32. It was one, I don't know, it went from 40 to 32 somehow. Very fine grain, but it had a beautiful way of interpreting color in terms of a black and white. If you think about it, that's quite a trick. How does film know to turn a red into a shade of gray or whatever? Well, this film did a really wonderful job at it. And so they reverse engineered Panatomic X, and they made a preset for it. I use it all the time. It's also got another feature that I love, which is, if you've ever studied Ansel Adams' books, he talks about the zone system that goes from pure white to pure dark, which you can see on your histogram. And you can adjust. You ideally want a full dynamic range in your photographs. That's what Ansel Adams taught us, and he's absolutely right. So I want the purest white that I can find and the darkest dark I can find, and it'll actually show you where those are in your photograph, so you can adjust them accordingly. I probably need to do a specific class just for this, and I think I will get that set up not too distant future, because it's such a great tool. So Christy, let me know how that goes. There's no filter. You don't want to use filters for black and white. Forget about that. You want to shoot in RAW. And as our friend Huntington Witherell pointed out, do not do a black and white. Don't tell your camera to shoot in black and white, because you'll actually eliminate some of the colors that you need to process correctly. Now, with the exception of the Leica, which is a monochromatic, great. I've never used one personally, but cool. It shoots in black and white and only black and white, and I think that's a cool idea. But that's the only exception. The rest of the time, just shoot in RAW, as you would all the time. Process in Silver Effects Pro. Now, the great thing is you can store your images, just like we were talking about, in Lightroom. Pull them up in Lightroom, do your initial edits, which you should do. Then when you've got your initial editing done, processing, you right-click, and it says Edit in Silver Effects Pro. It opens that program, and away you go. And then when you're done, it saves it back to Lightroom. A tip: remember to save everything as a TIFF file, because that'll allow you to go back and re-edit it in Silver Effects Pro later. That's a cool feature they added. All right, we've got time for a couple of more. Who's our next question?
We've got one more question, and I don't really have it written out because I couldn't find a specific example of it, but I know we get this question a lot. And if you have a question, this is the time to ask it in the chat while Mark works on this one. So we hear a lot from people that they want to know about what are the rules when it comes to photographing people in public. Do you need to get release forms? Things like that. And I know that a lot of people, it's kind of their biggest...
you keep talking, I'm going to grab the book.
Yeah. So while he's grabbing that, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching this, for you, maybe that's your hesitation, that, it's difficult going into a public place and not knowing whether or not you can photograph them.
We're installing solar panels. So if you hear all that pounding going on in the background, that's what's going on. Well, I'm going to tell you I'm going to answer that question. You see this book? It's called Getting Permission. Using and licensing copyrighted protected materials online and off, and that includes people. Obviously, I'm not going to answer this question in one sentence. Look at this book. So if you're serious about it, you should. And listen, the other reason I can't answer it is laws are different in different countries. So there's no blanket answer. So if I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You don't need model licenses," maybe that's not true in your country. So I'm not going to give you that answer. But this covers all sorts of copyright usage, and including people. NOLA Press, great resource, by the way, for any legal advice. And I'm sorry to have to tell you, you got to go to your own research, do your own research on this. Bob Holmes and I, we did a shoot where he was out at two different wineries, and I followed him around with a camera crew, and he was in the winery, and there were some people walking down the stairs, and he really wanted to include them in the frame. He says, "Do you mind if I take your photograph?" And they said no. And then afterwards, we had them sign our model release, because they were going to be not just in a photograph, but they were also going to be in our film. So, when in doubt, just get it signed. Now, if you're walking down the street, I'm not even going to go there. You guys have to figure that one out yourself. But you don't have to figure it out yourself. You can Google it. You can go to Nolo, I believe, nolo.com, and I think they have, from my memory, like a knowledge base that you could search. You don't have to necessarily buy the whole book. You can search their knowledge base. Okay. Most important thing is know what you can and can't do. And we shoot a lot of video, and a lot of that's commercial work, or it's going to go on YouTube. It's going to be really heavily used. You always want to make sure that your rights are in order. The worst nightmare in the world is have somebody flag you and say, "Hey, I didn't give you permission for that," and then you got to take your video down, and that's embarrassing. So check it out. But this is part of your toolkit. That's why we're very careful
with all the material we use too.
Yeah. And this is part of your toolkit as a creator. You got to know the legal side of things. You really do. Like if you're writing a book, can I quote this person? Is that legal to just quote them? Can I use their photograph? Answer is no, without their permission. Don't ever print something without somebody's permission. And keep, like we were talking about, label stuff, make sure you save that. 10 years from now, somebody might, I don't remember giving you permission, and you pull up their email. Yeah, you did. It's right here. So that's an important part of being a creative, is having your ducks in a row.
And also finding that line between legal right and what is like courtesy as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes situations change,
That's right.
And sometimes you can be legally right, but it's still the right thing to, even if you have the legal right to do something, to not do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes that happens.
Also, the other side of that is, we were talking with Deanne Fitzmaurice about shooting in Cuba, and she pulls out her camera, and people naturally get a little uncomfortable. Like, what's she here to do? Is she trying to show people, that we're a backward country, or whatever goes through their mind, So she puts them at ease and makes eye contact, smiles, lets them know she's not a big threat. And she's there to do fine art photography, not to do a political, spin on things. So that's another part of it, is just remember your human interaction, your communication skills are quite important.
Yeah, it's people you're taking photos of.
It's people. Okay, well, that's the end of our question. I hope you guys got some tips out of that. And almost everything I've talked about is written up somewhere in one of my books. Okay. You can get this book, by the way. We send it to you for the price of the printing. Jared put the link in there. You can also get the PDFs for Create and my composition book. These are all available to you. And by the way, this is one of the notebooks I use. I like these. You can get them online. Get them on Amazon. I like this size. To me, this is really perfect. I don't want to carry around a big fat notebook, but this works really well. And you can see my entries here. I just put the date and my little notes there. It's kind of a handy, not kind of, it's a very handy tool. Very, very, very key tool to your expanding your creativity. Get it out of your head. All right, thank you guys. I want to remind you, if you haven't already done so, to subscribe and enable the bell. Head over to our friends at Bay Photo Lab when we're done. And if you would leave your comments, if you're watching this video another time, you leave your questions or comments and I'll get around to answering them. Like it, share it if you really want to. And last but not least, you guys remember my mantra. Remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Take care, you guys. Stay creative. Remember, it's the antidote for all that nutty stuff going on out there. See you soon. See you next week.